Hello and welcome to Fine is a Four-Letter Word. My guest today is Stephen English. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
Hey there, Lori. So wonderful to be here with you today.
I am very excited to have you. You and I have, quote unquote, known each other for several years through LinkedIn and have been following each other's content and commenting. And sometimes we've gotten on phone calls and sorted some stuff out. And so I'm really thrilled to have you on the show today to hear your story or to share your story with the rest of the world.
Thrilled to be here. Yeah, you're right. It's amazing how on the LinkedIn platform we can create all these amazing connections, and we can take them really as deep or as shallow as we want. You know, if two people connect and they say, hey, we have enough in common here, let's get on a call, let's chit chat, let's share ideas, then we do. And you and I, that's part of our story, and I'm really glad and I'm honored here to be on your podcast.
Thank you. And, you know, after each episode that I record each interview episode has a meditation episode that comes after it as a bonus. And you and I have talked about having you do some meditations moving forward, potentially contributing some meditations to.
Yeah, I would love that. I admitted super amateur hour about it. And all I lean on is the fact that I've had enough people tell me I could listen to your voice to fall asleep. And I said, well, hey, there's some data right there. I'm happy.
Because you have a very calming presence and way of delivering. So
I'm happy to do that. Yeah. If I could.
Cool.
What's that guy? Oshi? Isn't he one of the famous guys? I'll be like him. I'll be like Oshi, and they'll have me on Insight Timer.
I don't know Oshi, but I am on Insight Timer and I talk about it all the time. Now I'm going to have to go look for Oshi.
Or Oso or Oshi. I don't know. Now I'm like practically thinking, did I have the name right? But you get the idea.
Now that you mentioned that, we'll have to find it and put it in the show notes.
If I'm right. If I'm wrong, we'll say.
We'll find the right person's name and put that in the show notes.
Steve brain farted. Yes.
Let me ask you the first question that I like to ask all of my guests, and that is, what were the values and beliefs that you were raised with that contributed to you becoming who you are?
Oh, that's an interesting one. The values and beliefs that I was raised with. The one that comes to my mind here is that you are valued for what you know. And I remember when I was a young man growing up, my mother always wanted me to, at that time it was become a doctor. And I misinterpreted that. And I thought it was, as long as I can put doctor in front of my name. And so my idea at the time was to get a PhD in physics. So one of them was, that you're valued, your value in society is what you know. I guess that would be kind of one that's empowering. Disempowering. I think there weren't explicit comments, or at least it's hard for me to recall where a scarcity mindset was implemented, meaning that, money doesn't grow on trees. Money is hard to come by. You have to work hard to earn a living. I think at this point in my life, I'm coming up on 49. I have wiped those away. However, in the way that we lived as a family, my parents were together until I was about 12, and then they got divorced, and I watched my mother work her tail off. As a single mother, there was a lot of scarcity. There was a lot of, we can't afford that. You have to do without. And so those are the two that come to mind, right? It was maybe that money is hard to come by, and you are valued for your knowledge.
And how did those two things play out as you grew up and furthered your education? Did you get a PhD? And
I aimed for it. I remember when I was in high school, I graduated kind of young, not like I got moved up in a grade. It was just because of where my birthday was. But I remember they were asking me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And, senior year. And I was saying, well, I want to be a high energy particle physicist working at like CERN or Fermilab or something like that. And really all that's remained of that is I am high energy, and sometimes that's from caffeine. And I still do have an analytical mind from my physics training. I ended up going off to undergraduate, got a physics degree, went off to graduate school to pursue a PhD in physics. And then there was a moment there where I realized that at that level, it was really mathematics. Like anybody who's studied physics will acknowledge fully that at the graduate level, most of it is, I'll just call it mathematics gymnastics. So what I mean by that is if you go from these first principle equations, how can you derive this useful equation that maybe some engineer is going to go use? And the steps, the 5 or 6 steps that got us from fundamental principles to a useful equation, that was really tough for me. So I say the language of physics is mathematics, and the language of material science, this is ultimately where I landed, the language of material science is English, and I speak English better than I speak math. So that's how it all played out, when all the dust settled and all the college loans became due in 1998 after I exited graduate school. That's what I had. I had a master's in material science and a bachelor's in physics.
Was anyone in your family disappointed with that? Because if they were teaching you that the value of what you know, that you're valued for what you know, did they think you didn't know enough?
Oh, no, not at all. Fortunately, both of my parents, I say it kind of fortunately. Fortunately, neither of them graduated college. So, and actually, come to think of it, the only person they did, so my parents, my parents' parents, the only person that did graduate was my grandmother's third husband, near as I can tell. So he went to Yale. He got a chemical engineering degree. He was part of the greatest generation, got out, GI Bill, was in industry, he was very highly regarded. He was promoted several times, and he ended up being a bit of a role model for me. No, no one was disappointed. I will admit my mother is probably one of the best cheerleaders, and my father too. Like over the years, my father and I both have developed a better relationship, and he's told me he's proud of me. My mother, men in her life have jokingly said to me, if I listened to everything your mother said, I would believe you walked on water. So yeah, no, nobody was disappointed about that. I will say, but I sometimes, because that belief was in me, I felt I fell short, and it's taken a lot of years and a lot of introspection and a lot of really feedback from people who were outside of these academic and engineering circles, because just in the world of engineering, you're meeting some really, really intellectual, maybe not necessarily emotionally intelligent, but intellectually very intelligent, very knowledgeable people. And I may or may not have stood out in those environments. However, in the let's say bigger scheme, I do feel as though I stand out from just a knowledge and skills perspective. So yeah, it's a little recalibration, and then maybe a little bit of self-love.
It's that looking at that comparison pool. So when you're comparing yourself to other people who have those same degrees that you have, then maybe you don't feel as smart when you're comparing yourself to the average rest of the world. Super smart. And we all do this,
Right.
Regardless of whether we have a master's degree in physics or whatever. We compare ourselves unfavorably to people who are doing what we perceive as so much better than us.
Absolutely. Yeah. The comparison trap. We also don't see the full picture. We're comparing our insides to somebody's outsides that are highly polished and maybe heavily filtered. So yeah, it's taken me a long time to heal that part of me and to start to see things for really what it is just nobody knows shit. Like everybody's confused. Everybody's a little bit crazy. It's not a competition, and we're all just doing the best we can.
Sometimes I wonder about that crazy competition, though. Some people are treating it like it is.
That's right. They're going to get a gold star in just crazy.
Sometimes you wonder.
Gotta wonder.
So since the show is called Fine is a 4-letter word, tell us about a time when you said everything was fine and it really wasn't fine.
Oh, geez. How long do we have? Oh my goodness. Oof. Since this is on a podcast, I have to ask myself every so often, who might listen to it? Boy, one thing was fine and it wasn't. Geez. I was at Samsung Austin Semiconductor for 11 years, and there was a lot of times when things weren't fine at all, and I just let it go because I just didn't feel that the fight was worth it, or that I felt that the short term versus long term, what I saw as a short term sacrifice justified a long term gain, and to get really specific, I can think of a ton of different things, but there was it's a funny story. We were moving from one kind of device to another device. This was going from dynamic RAM, so DRAM, to flash memory. So every single cellular phone, every digital camera, even many laptops now have a lot of flash memory in them in the form of the solid state drives, the SSDs. And there was this, let's say, management there was saying it's like a war, and we're at war with Fujitsu and Sony, and and they rattle off all these people who we were in war with. So they said, hey, come on down to this meeting room. It's a meeting room held 90 people, and they had a big screen. And we were watching a movie, and they said, hey, we want you to watch this clip. So they put on this war movie, and it was a Korean war movie, and of course it has subtitles and everything, and it had the goriest war scene ever. And I remember thinking to myself, I need to walk out of here, because this is not good for my psyche. This is not good for me. In fact, this tells me how incredibly toxic this work culture is. If these guys up there in the front of the room think this is acceptable to have us watch somebody take a helmet and beat another man to death with it. I mean, it eclipsed any of the war movies I had ever seen up to that point. And I thought, why am I tolerating this? But I said it's fine, right? And I just went about the rest of my day. And now here I am. I'm like, that's one of my many stories that I'm going to put in this fictional book that I have yet to write. And I say fictional, meaning that the book itself is fictional. What goes into the book is not fictional at all. So yeah, like I would say that across the 11 years when I worked at that company, there were many days where I said everything's fine, but yet I was ripping my own self apart in terms of my self-esteem, my self-confidence. And that was what really I had to repair, even to get out of the company. So that was a really tough thing.
Did you start working on that self-esteem and self-repair while you were still there, or did you have to leave to even get started?
No, I had to do it while I was there because in my view, I have a responsibility and I have a obligation, which I know those are really in a lot of ways kind of really bad words, especially obligation. But I felt like, I was at that time a divorced father. I had certain financial obligations that I had to attend to, and I didn't see that, okay, I could bail out and draw on a 401k, or go to the corporate counsel and at the company and say, hey, I'm leaving, and I could sue you, right, for some of these things that have happened here, some reverse discrimination, some all kinds of just stuff, right? I could have made all kinds of statements and possibly gotten a settlement out of them, and I didn't. But I said, hey, I'm going to stay here. Now, it coincided with my recovery from alcoholism. And when I finally made that decision to quit drinking, I started to build up that personal power. And then because I was in a place of, okay, you know what? I still got this job. I'm cool. I got this income coming in. Now I can put the periscope up, and with my own partially repaired self, I can go out to the into the career space and do the career search and try to find a job in my area in this very niche industry, right? The semiconductor industry. There's not like, semiconductor fabs on every corner. There's not microelectronics companies on every corner. It's not like being an insurance salesman.
Mm-hmm.
So that was what had to happen, right? It was kind of a parallel path. I had to start repairing myself. And then even after I left, I had to repair myself because once I left and I went to the other company, I still had kind of this residual PTSD.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it sounds like you would have had PTSD.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Like the things that people say to you, the things that were done. I remember there was a story. I told my dad about this one. He said he would have just literally walked out. I was in a meeting. I got blamed for a problem. And myself, my manager, and another gentleman went into a meeting. The meeting started out all in English. And then at one point it went into Korean, and it was like, Steve, and I'm hearing my name. And I'm going, wait a minute, you're throwing me under the bus in a foreign language? I can't even understand either of you. And both of you have lived in this country for greater than 10 years, and your English is pretty darn good. And yet you're throwing me under the bus in a foreign language? My dad was like, oh, I would have just thrown my badge down and walked out. I was like, well, I couldn't.
Yeah.
But that was the kind of thing, like I became so sensitized to being blamed for things that I became very defensive. And so when I went out, even left that company, when things would happen, I would, my amygdala would get all fired up, and I'm all like, fight or flight,
Right.
fawn or freeze.
Conditioned to
Yeah, I was so
respond
conditioned
in a certain way, or actually not even respond. It was react
Absolutely.
in a certain way.
Absolutely. And I had to move
So
through
you
that.
had to retrain rewire your brain, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that was really, what had happened there. And it's still evolving. The very fact that I'm even talking about this with you today is kind of a sign that I'm not 100% healed.
Yeah. Speaking of talking, and you mentioned it a few minutes ago about your being in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
What inspired you to take that step? Because you were still at this toxic company when you made the decision to do that. What was there a specific incident, or what led you to that?
Yeah, it's so funny because everybody, one would imagine, let's just say this, one would imagine that, they say change happens when the pain is greater than the gain. I've probably heard Tony Robbins say that a dozen times. At the point at which I finally made that decision, there was zero pain. it was very strange. I remember August 29th, 2016, I had, I don't know, between 3, 4, something like that, 3 or 4 shots of vodka, and maybe it was 10, 11 a.m. in the morning. I didn't normally do that, but on the weekends I would have a little bit earlier. And I handed off the bottle to my girlfriend, and I said, "Hey, please take this from me." And she said, because she wasn't an alcoholic and she lived around normies her whole life, she was like, "Oh yeah, I'll keep it for special occasions." And I was like, no, you need to take that from me. And then I went to the freezer and I grabbed the other recently purchased, unfortunately, bottle of tequila, and I handed it to her. I said the same thing. I said, "Please take this." And ironically, yeah, there was not like the bottoms all were between 2 and 8 years before that. A succession of bottoms, getting my first DWI, getting my second arrest for DWI, getting my third arrest for DWI, getting a driving with license invalid and getting arrested in front of my girlfriend and my son and her son. All of those were all in 2014. So yeah, I had a succession of bottoms. The only thing I can imagine that happened was that, God intervened. That's the only thing I can imagine, is that
It was time.
it was time. Yeah, it just was time. It was just time. And yeah, it's funny because I go back through my phone, and I, because of the wonders of the cell phone, right? We have all these pictures and they all have date stamps and all of them. And I'm looking back and I'm like, wow. So 4 days before I got sober, I was doing this, and then 2 days before, and I'm like, well, this is interesting. There's nothing noteworthy. These are all just normal life events.
You are very open about talking about your recovery on LinkedIn and elsewhere. How many years were you drinking? And what then did you do after that? Did you go into a program?
How many years was I drinking? So I was a late bloomer in terms of when I really started, because when I was in high school, a lot of the kids had already started raiding their parents' liquor cabinets and things like that. And occasionally we would have little gatherings at my friend Mike's house, and his parents had some liquor in the cabinet, and we would have a little bit. And I think there were kind of signs at that point, but I really wasn't aware of it. And I think it was that sense of ease and comfort that came with taking a couple of drinks. But I wasn't like going crazy with it, right?
And like most kids in high school, right?
Yeah.
We were all doing it.
Yeah, and I, thanks to God, or maybe my own ignorance, knock on wood, my kids aren't doing that, and hopefully they'll learn from my experience. Then I went to college. I binge drank a little bit there. I was in a fraternity, so there was some drinking. Then I graduated and with my master's, really didn't drink too much. But the warning was, there was one Halloween party, and one of the coworkers took a picture of me. I was passed out on the bathroom floor, and that was kind of a sign. And of course, in hindsight, you're like, hey, I blackout last night, whatever. So those were really, it was just really kind of little episodic things. And then I went to Korea for 5 weeks, and, I think I had like a pilot light of alcoholism because of the environment that I, grew up with the people in my life who drank, and just some of the things, my childhood experiences and whatnot. And then and genetics, and then it was like 5 weeks was just too much. It was like so much gasoline being poured upon this pilot light, and it just started to burn things down. And then I came back, and I was a daily drinker. And it's funny because I'll talk to clients about coaching, and I'll say, hey, when there's a habit that is very pleasurable. Imagine like cocaine, chocolate, heroin, alcohol. That's easy to form that habit in a very short period of time. Whereas positive habits that don't have a pleasure dopamine mechanism, if you will, they're hard to build. And so the science says it's like 70 to 80 days to actually build those kind of habits. Well, I had 5 weeks of a pleasurable habit.
Yeah.
So I came back and I was a daily drinker, and then it just kept escalating. Alcoholism is a progressive disease. It gets worse, never better. And it just kept growing and growing and growing. So, that was 2007 when I really started to drink a lot. And so I went from 2007 to 2016. So I had a pretty strong 9-year drinking career.
And then you just decided on August 29th that you were done.
Yes.
Did you go to a program?
I did go to a program. I didn't
decide I'm going to do this on my own?
Yeah, I did go to a program. I didn't go into rehab. I didn't go into detox. Fortunately, the way my body processed alcohol and the sheer amount of it was not such that I had, delirium tremens or any kind of physical symptoms. Thanks to God on that one, because that's what a lot of times what happens is people say, hey, I want to quit drinking. And then they start to get the shakes or they get the DTs. And then they're like, holy shit, I can't. And then they have to go back and keep drinking. So yeah, I did. I got into a program of recovery and fully embraced it. And I can say, my life has been transformed through it. And I jokingly say, in that recovery program, I say, this is like the world's cheapest and longest Tony Robbins weekend, because we went there to quit drinking, yet we are helped in so many other ways. Like it's like the solution to the drink is the solution to the life problem. The same, let's say, design for living and the same way of approaching life that, so the drinking is just a symptom, right? Of a spiritual problem or a void that people have. And so yeah, that's how it all transpired. And yeah, I am very transparent about it, and I share a lot about it on social media because I know that it's going to help somebody. For as much as there could be somebody who's judging me and saying, oh, this guy, he's, sensationalizing it, or who the hell is he? Or even that active alcoholic who doesn't want to read what I'm saying. I honestly don't give a, and because you have I can use the Chaucerian expletive, I don't give a fuck. I really have run out of fucks for people out there who are going to look down on folks who want a better life. It's kind of like making fun of the fat person at the gym. You know what I mean? Like, remember, that person's here because they want to transform.
Right.
And so if somebody is helped by my post, and the cool thing is, I know with 100% certainty, having written what I've written and shared what I've shared, I have helped a lot of people. And I'm not saying that like to pat myself on the back. What I'm saying is that for any of the judgment that people may have, looking down on me, saying whatever negative thing they can say, I can say the juice is worth the squeeze.
Yeah. And what you write, no doubt, helps other people, and I would imagine helps you as well, to get it out of your head and to put it on paper, electronic paper. So everyone benefits. Talk to me about the tools that you use or that you have used to, not just in your recovery necessarily, like recovery from drinking, but to keep you in a positive or an uplifting mindset. Are there tools that you use every day?
Yeah,
or that you have used, or maybe not tools that you're using today, but have used to get you to where you are today?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And there's a ton of things there. So I say, the first thing is just getting incredibly honest with yourself and your emotions. And one way of doing that is with journaling. And, really, in fact, when I first got into recovery, that was my way of staying present when I felt like I was being pulled in different directions, at least mentally, and I would just sit and write and write and write. And so that was helpful. I would also say that the prayer and meditation, of course, is something that everybody would say can help you. And I can, even this morning I did 10 minutes of meditation, and there was just some clarity that came to me. I would say having a lot more openness with people. So now you've written and you've gotten very honest. Well, getting out there and not holding on to these things. And it's kind of like these things will weigh you down, right? So when you're not open with other people, now you carry that stuff around with you. It's like an emotional burden. So I had to start to get brutally honest with people in my life. Am I perfect at it? Hell no. It's progress, not perfection. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, a willingness to do things that are really outside of, and I know it's so cliche, the outside your comfort zone. But it's true. It's really true. Like doing uncomfortable things. So now you've been honest with yourself. That honesty, that reflection has come to you either through, journaling with prompts, journaling free form. Then openness to new ideas can come from being very, very quiet with your mind through meditation and prayer. And then, the willingness to go out there and start to have these conversations and do things that scared you. That has helped me immensely, so that I'm not carrying around so much of a backpack of these emotional burdens that were my own, let's say, my own justification for, picking up the drink or even just being an asshole. Right? I mean, there's a lot of people out there who maybe it's not that they're going to pick up a drink and get drunk. They're just going to make a mess out of their life, and then they're going to have like an emotional hangover, right? Like the next day, they're going to be like, I can't believe I said that to that person.
Right. They've created that chaos.
Yeah.
And drama.
Yeah.
In their life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And drama is addictive.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, drama is addictive. I myself had been in that place where I created messes all over my life just to feel more.
Yeah. Yeah. As you were talking about unburdening yourself by being open, I had this visual of a hot air balloon, which is something is on my bucket list. I would love to do hot air balloon. But a hot air, like you have to let go of they have to toss the sandbags over to fly.
Absolutely.
And I had that visual as you were talking about unburdening yourself so that you can fly, so that you can achieve great things in your life, unburden those things that aren't serving you.
Absolutely. And they could be in the form of a resentment that you have against somebody. And so now you need to have a difficult conversation with somebody. It could be that you wronged somebody and now you need to go and make some amends with somebody. But, it's all this stuff that you're carrying around. You can unburden yourself and then you'll be lighter, just like you said.
Yeah. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be with another person. That forgiveness a lot of times is forgiving yourself for being human, for making mistakes, for making choices that you, in hindsight, maybe would have preferred to make a different choice. But forgive yourself because you did the best you could with what you had and what you knew at the time. And now let that burden go so that you can move forward in freedom.
Absolutely. In fact, there's so really you're pointing to self-empathy. And in one of the coaching programs that I do, one of the tools is called Visualize the Child. And you go back and you find a 4, 5, 6-year-old picture of yourself. And I've got this super cute 70s kid picture of myself, or my mom matched my socks with my sport coat or whatever it was, sweater. I had a sweater on. I was like a little model, and I can see in it, I can see my essence, and I can see that pure essence that I had as a child. And sometimes looking at that helps me create more empathy for myself. And so I can have that self-forgiveness.
That's a very powerful exercise. Thank you so much for sharing what you've shared today. Before we go, the ending question is always, what is the song you listen to when you need a boost of energy? You need to get hyped. In baseball, they call it your walk-up song.
Yeah.
What's your song?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it changes all the time. And I'll tell you what it is this week, because I'm going to give a speech tomorrow, and at Toastmasters. It's my favorite way to get better at this thing that people are scared of. And I'm going to make reference to this song that has been in my world for a long time. So it's from an electronic band called the Chemical Brothers, which maybe back in my partying days, it was a little bit more apropos. However, they have a song called It Doesn't Matter. And the lyrics are very simple. It is literally, it doesn't matter. And it's a repeated, they just repeat that, and there's a bass line in the background. And I'm going to go put it on as soon as we're done with this call, because for whatever reason, it just lightens things up. And I think that there's such a power in releasing that something really matters, right? Like sometimes people say, use the 5-year rule. Like if you look back on it, 5 years from now, and it wouldn't have mattered, then whatever, let it go. And I forget the way it is. And it's Osho, by the way, not Oshi. By the way, it's Osho. It came to me after we said it.
Okay, cool.
O-S-H-O. That's the way my brain works. It just kind of goes off and
we got it.
Squirrel. So yeah, I would say Chemical Brothers, It Doesn't Matter. So play that, crank it up, break your speakers. That's what I'm going to go do.
Awesome. Well, we're going to put a link to that in the show notes so everybody can go listen to it and have that running through their head.
Cool.
Awesome. If someone wants to continue a conversation with you, where's the best place to find you?
I mainly hang out on LinkedIn. I do have a Facebook page, of course. I'm easier to find on LinkedIn because I'm Stephen English with a V, English spelled like the language, comma PCC, Professional Certified Coach. There's only one of me out there. On Facebook, there's a whole bunch of Stephen Englishes. Not too many. You'll probably recognize my picture. My picture between both platforms looks the same. So they can find me on either platform. Okay, and I'll give you a link tree. I'll give you a link tree link for your show notes.
Perfect. Yeah. So I'll include that in the show notes, and it'll make it really easy for people.
Toot toot.
Thanks, Lori, so much for joining me today, Stephen, on Fine is a 4-letter word.
Awesome blossom.